All right, so it's always dangerous to say something like this, but I think the best democracy group in state group in the country is right here. The best North Carolina. The best North Carolina. But it's been great to work with them over the last years, and it's been a tough last year, and we'll hear some of that, but I'm sure they're doing good things. So thanks for being here, and thanks for hearing what you have to say.
All right, thanks so much, Rob. We're glad to be here. We always like coming to these fair vote gatherings and getting a lot of great ideas that we try to take back to North Carolina and steal and implement. And we've had some luck over the years being able to do that. But now we're really playing a lot of defense in our state. And there's a lot of things that are going on that are attacking people's fundamental right to vote, we believe, that are very concerning not only to folks in North Carolina, but people all over the country. But you know, I remember we came to this conference years back and we heard people talking about this idea of pre-registration for teenagers. You know, if you're 16 years old, you should be able to go ahead and register to vote. And then when you're of voting age, which in North Carolina, when you're 17, you can vote in the primary as long as you can be 18 by election day. And we took it back to North Carolina and we passed it and implemented it. And you know, 40,000 16 and 17-year-olds got pre-registered to vote that next year. So those are the kind of things, instant runoff voting and other things that we've been able to work on over the years. But I want to go ahead and first introduce us as an organizing team, because that's what we are. We're a team. And then we're going to go in and we're going to tell you a little bit about what's been going on in North Carolina and what we're doing to try to fight back. I apologize, we had a PowerPoint presentation ready to go, but our communications director uses these fancy fonts that if they're not downloaded on computers, it looks all jumbled up on the screen, so we'll roll with it. So I'm Adam Sotak, I'm the organizing director of Democracy North Carolina. Let's go start on my left.
I'm Jay Keller-Goad. I'm one of our Eastern organizers for Democracy North Carolina.
I'm Linda Sutton, Central North Carolina organizer.
Robert Dawkins, the Western North Carolina organizer.
I'm Garcia Fogarty, Operation Jumpstart Manager.
Nancy Shacker, I'm Southeast North Carolina organizer.
Okay, so we're going to try to speak up so everybody can hear us. We're going to talk a little bit about promoting, respecting, and protecting our vote in North Carolina. So our mission at Democracy North Carolina is to build a multiracial, critically educated, and engaged culture that makes the political process a means of empowerment for the many, not the few, and removes barriers to voting and serving in office, creating a government of, by, and for the people. So that's our mission. We're a 501c3. And that's what we're out trying to do in the state of North Carolina. So just to give you a little quick history, you know, in North Carolina we've got some real levers of oppression that have been very real and present in our state throughout history. Those include, you know, a history, unfortunately, of racism, of poverty, of anti-unionism, of a good old boy network, which really managed things for the few to the exclusion of the many. And that includes when the Democratic Party was completely in power for over 100 years in our state. So, you know, these are kind of some of the history that we're working up against. And now we've even got our own $40 million man in North Carolina. His name's Art Pope. Okay? So this guy, he's the head of this corporation called Variety Wholesalers, and he and his network have, he funds a lot of 501c3 organizations as well as C4s and other groups that throw money into the elections process. In the last 10 years combined, his network has spent about $40 million. He's one of the only there's only about 4 board members of the National Americans for Prosperity, right? It's like the 2 Koch brothers, Art Pope, and there's somebody else.
Oh.
But he's from North Carolina, lives there, and he's now our deputy budget director for the governor in the state of North Carolina. Okay? So that's sort of what's happening right now. But we've had threads of progressivism. Some things that have been really good in our state and continue to be good. We've had some elected leaders over the years that have really done some positive things, especially in a southern state, to say government needs to take a proactive role in our lives. It needs to step up and help people get educations. We need to build roads. We need to give opportunities for people. And so we've got some of that proud history there. We've got a proud history of civil rights and student activism in our state that's stretched for decades and continues to go on today. We've got progressive funders and nonprofits in our state. We've got a really solid network of nonprofits, progressive funders. We've got the Z. Smith Reynolds, which is foundation based in North Carolina, old tobacco money, only funds North Carolina work, and funds us and a lot of organizations doing work. And then there's business progressivism. We do have this history in our state of big business leaders, the good old boys, actually supporting some of these government infrastructures because they saw it as a path, a solid business strategy, and a path to greater business as well. So that's kind of the background, and leads us up to where kind of we are in the recent past and the fights that we've been engaged in, and Linda's going to talk a little bit about that.
Let me tell you about some of the wins along the way, because it hasn't always been like it is now. So we've had some very good progressive wins in our state. And our organization for the past 20 years has been working to protect voting rights and limit the influence of money in politics. So along the way, early voting, very important in our state. We've had more sites to open, longer hours, weekends, that really let more people into the voting process. We had voter-owned elections, and other states hailed our program as being very progressive, where candidates would not have to depend on special interest money. Candidates felt that they could really concentrate on talking about issues versus getting out there trying to raise money for a campaign. Same-day registration. I can't tell you how important same-day registration is to the election process, because those folks who missed North Carolina's 25-day deadline before the election can go in there and register and vote at the same time. So that was a very progressive piece of legislation. We had 6 million voters, a little over 6 million voters in North Carolina, with a little over 4 million that voted in 2012. But look, half of them voted before election day during early voting. So it's a very good tool for improving election turnout in the state. We also had pre-registration teams. Not only could the boards of elections work with the school system to go in and register those students and pre-register those students, but we got a curriculum developed through our university system that our civics teachers and social studies teachers could actually take to those classrooms. It was a very effective program. That was a good win. Souls to the polls, some call it pews to the polls. It was very instrumental in mobilizing the faith community. Not only to have marches on Sunday to the polls, but also teaching during Sunday school, or having a march after Bible study to go vote. But it was a way that we galvanized the faith community. We had quite a few marches across the state that participated and marched to the polls. Instant runoff voting. You've heard a lot about that. We tried it. We loved it. It seems like everything we loved, they took a shot at it. Out of precinct provisional voting. You show up at the wrong polling place. You had the right to demand to vote. The right to demand to vote. Now that was very important. A A lot of people move, they don't know the rules, so they show up at the wrong place. 5 minutes before the polling place closes, you can't make it across town to your correct polling place. You can vote that provisional ballot, you know, away from your precinct. Everything that was working to improve elections and get voters to the polls, they took a stab at it. We won all of this stuff in our state. We won it all, and we were voting like crazy. Our 2008 election, registration, just boom. Turnout, just boom. But we were under attack.
Yes, we were.
I guess we were doing too well for some folks. I guess too many people were showing up at the polls. It was not a good thing. So after 2008, what do we have? The Tea Party movement, right? Tea Party movement came on the scene. Oh, wow. We had our money man, Art Pope, elevated to the budget director, putting his 5 and 10 cent stores in minority communities mostly, taking their money and then funding legislators who in turn strip them of their rights and their safety nets. That's Art Pope. You all probably got an Art Pope in your community too, because they're buying our legislators. Not only them, they're buying our judges. Where else do we have to go other than our court system? They go to our court system if our judges have actually been bought. Where else do we have to go? Just think about that. That's what scares me the most. And we had our Democratic Party scandals in North Carolina, which are still going on. And we had the attempt to suppress the vote. That began our voter ID little trip. We're trying to fight against voter ID. We had the midterm elections that came. You know, people don't vote like that. Vote in the presidential election. Midterm elections, I guess people must have thought we had it made, right? They must have. They didn't come out and vote. We had the 2010 census. So when you have your majority, House and Senate in control of drawing the district lines, you had a lot of double bunking, which actually led to a lot of female legislators bowing out. Right? We lost a lot of women. Gerrymandering, I tell you folks, it's a very serious issue. They have drawn out, we have districts where people in different districts live next door to each other, across the street. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. But it's all in an attempt to retain their power, to draw those lines in their favor. So we had the voter ID bill that passed, but our then governor, Beverly Perdue, vetoed it, and they could not sustain, override that veto. But it wasn't for long. They came back again, undertake again. So in 100 years, our governorship, our state house, and our state senate was turned over. And in control of all 3 branches of government, you're gonna hear from Jake just exactly what we got for it. And not only was it voter suppression bills, but they attacked all of the safety nets, okay? Medicaid expansion, unemployment insurance, teachers, you name it, unions, all across the board, environmental protections, all across the board. But we're here at a voting conference, so I won't lift up having our people who are getting food stamps have to take a drug test and things like that. But it's really dire in North Carolina, but we have hope. We got a group of fighters, and that's why we came to this conference, because like Adam was saying, everything we pick up here, we're gonna take it back, believe me, because we're gonna need everything in our power to fight. So I turn it over to Jake.
Yeah, so Linda's kind of introduced to everybody about how good things gotten in North Carolina. A lot of folks have tended to kind of write off North Carolina, think, oh, it's the South, and just think, oh, well, they must be backwards, right? But North Carolina actually became a beacon in the South and really in the country. It had gone from being one of the worst states on voting rights issues to being one of the best states and having some of the highest turnouts across the nation. And then thanks to House Bill 589, which this sheet is all about, we lost all that. So we've been calling this a monster law, we've been calling it a reanimation of Jim Crow, and we've been looking at how this plays. It's not just about fraud, not just about the issues that the folks who pass this bill want to talk about. It's really rooted in a history of voter suppression interstate and internation, and we're trying to connect back to that and have folks realize how this is going to affect voters. And you can see on here, it was over a 50-page bill that was rushed through in the last 72 hours of the session. There was no time to respond to a lot of this. Even the stuff where we thought we'd been winning, we'd been fighting really hard, they came at us with a really heavy wave, did it last minute, and it was done. And so you can see all the changes that happened. The photo ID requirement. They're going to start asking for photo IDs at the polls in this election cycle, although it's not going to be required until 2016. That still creates a word on the street, that creates a buzz, that creates just an atmosphere of voter suppression. But a lot of these things are going into effect right now. We've already lost pre-registration. So we've been hearing great recommendations about how to expand the voter access, reach out to young people, include them more in the voting process. Well, in North Carolina, it's going in reverse. We've been registering young people through the DMVs. We've been going into the high schools. Two of the best places I've ever done voter registration drives are at immigration ceremonies and at high schools, getting people as they're entering into the voting process by coming of age or by becoming a citizen. And in the high schools, you can set up a voter registration drive in a lunchroom, do it for an hour, and have 100, 200 voter registration forms in hand. And y'all know voter registration. Where else can you do a voter registration drive and get that kind of turnout? You're not getting that at a grocery store. You're not getting that in a lot of places where you set up these voter registration drives. So that was a big loss. The photo ID is devastating, and I'm sure a lot of people in here know all about that. But it's also no more same-day registration. And that's really helpful for transient voters who are moving around the state, voters who are getting registered for the first time. And all of these really impact not only transient voters, but it tends to get young voters, seniors, people of color, and women. For each one of these, we've done the research. Research is a big piece of what Democracy North Carolina does through our executive director, Bob Hall. And we've looked at who does this affect, and disproportionately it's those groups every single time one of these pieces goes through. The No Straight Party voting. A lot of people don't realize that, but disproportionately it's hitting African Americans, it's hitting people of color, it's hitting a lot of the same folks. The no out of precinct voting, like Rocker was talking about down in Charlotte, that's going to be a major hit. They didn't quite ban Sunday voting, but they took over all the 100 county boards of elections and have a kind of hostile view towards it. So it's a much more uphill fight to win that. And it just goes on and on. There's more things that I can even go over. More poll observers, so people roaming around, challenging votes, creating an atmosphere of hostility at the polls is a concern that we have. Getting rid of stand by your ad in North Carolina. I'm such and such, and I approve this message. Trying to get rid of those sort of requirements. So it's all the money in politics pieces and all the voting rights pieces. They've really done a number on us. And so I'm glad I get to tell you how bad things have gone, but I can leave it up to others to tell you how it's going to get better, how we're going to have hope, and how we're going to organize against it. And that'll be Robert and Ron to get you some of that.
Just a very quick process question. How long was it between the time that they dropped these amendments into the bill and the bill passed election?
It was like 72 hours.
72 hours, so like this whole wave thing.
Yeah, because they had the ID bill that really was just focusing on ID, and then they came in and just added all of this other stuff on.
So yeah, we're going to talk for a few minutes about our plan, what we're doing in the state to fight back. Again, like everybody else said, North Carolina, as far as all of the South goes, the main reason that I chose after leaving the days with Acorn and living in Los Angeles, living in Philly, and living in circumstances to come back was to come back to live in Charlotte, North Carolina, which was close to home. It was a city when I was a kid of 300,000 people, and now it's a city of 1.2 million people. It's the 15th largest city in the country. It was built and it grew over all of this time because it was a haven in the South, like Atlanta, that if you were African American, if you were a woman, if you were LGBT, if you wanted to start a business, then Charlotte was welcome. Now we also had the bad part too. There's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and there's like that. I'm not gonna make it out to seem like it's Disneyland. But at the same time, Charlotte grew because of the progressive nature of our state, and now all of this has been put under attack. So we're sitting here and we're looking as far as what is the scale of how we're going to look to fight back. First thing's been major, and that's been Moral Monday. Moral Monday is everybody in here familiar with Moral Monday? Well, I won't spend a lot of time giving you the history. But first thing I want to say is I know there's some people in the room that aren't North Carolinians that took time out of your day to come to the South, which I know scares a lot of Northerners, came to the South and actually laid it down and got arrested for it. So I do want to say specifically to Ryan and to Whitney, I do appreciate y'all coming to Charlotte, I was coming to Raleigh, getting arrested for us in our movement. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, Moral Mondays, when Reverend Barber and NAACP got all of us together, it's a 150-person coalition. Out of that, the largest members, of course, being NAACP, Democracy North Carolina, the League of Women Voters, Common Cause, Planned Parenthood, you know, the normal group that you would always get. But what made this different is this wasn't just a normal, liberal, progressive, wear a tie-dye, smoke a blunt, and sing Kumbaya group. We went after and we got groups that normally might not be our normal group because we're talking morality here. I know that Frank spent a lot of time talking about how the conservatives have taken a moral stand. They've taken that word and said that their agenda is moral. You know, that's how they do. They always want to say that they're fighting for God and country and taxes and morality. Well, Dr. Barber's thing here is that there is nothing moral about not feeding the hungry, not clothing people that don't have clothes, cutting people's earned income tax credit from women that use that $3,500 tax credit to help be able to provide some money for their family, cutting Medicaid. When the Congress said that they were going to extend unemployment benefits for another year, North Carolina said, no, screw that. We will not take it. It wasn't that North Carolina didn't have the money to pay unemployment. The federal government guaranteed us another year of unemployment. The General Assembly just said, we will not take the money. We will send the rate of unemployment from Charlotte, which was at like 2% to 9% in the course of a few months just because they would not accept the money. So that's what Moral Monday's about. And I'm going to put one more pitch in for anybody that is able to make it next Saturday. Raleigh, our house, the People's House is on Jones Street. We will be having Moral Monday again. I'm hoping that as many people can. If you live in the Washington, D.C. area, I've timed it a million times. It's 4 hours. If you would come down, not asking people to get arrested this time, but if you would come, it would be appreciated. Dr. Barber's call is for this Moral Monday to be the largest action in the South since Selma, Alabama. So we need 40,000 people. We've broken the 12,000 mark before. We want this march to break 40,000 people, so please join us with MSNBC and all the other groups. Hope y'all will come. So Moral Monday, that's one thing that we're doing. It's huge. Next thing we're going to talk about is a renewed renewed voting rights focus. A lot of us have moved on from worrying about voting rights to worrying about access. You know, we've gotten to the point to where we have looked at and said we don't have to fight as much on voter rights because we're getting now same-day voter registration. We're the only place in the South that had 16, 17-year-old pre-registration of youth. We have moved on to the point where we can work on access and not voting rights. So now we're back in that voter rights stream. What I can tell you from North Carolina, since we did start the sit-in movement, and we do have a lot of powerful pastors that do understand how to do the voter rights strong, we have no problem going back and doing that. So that's why we're back to civil disobedience and why we're back to doing those type of tactics. Legal challenges. Legal challenges, we've worked hard and we've built a solid coalition. When I say we, that's all of these different groups, whether it's the League of Women Voters, whether it's the NAACP, we all work on whatever our area of expertise is to benefit the legal struggle. So Southern Coalition of Social Justice is our main attorneys. Their job is to write up what the attorneys do. Our job is to find the victims. The League of Women Voters is to have conferences and bring in people and educate people. So this legal struggle is a coalition. It's an effort with everybody taking their own part of how can we identify victims, how can we get people there, how can we make sure that we have the attorneys. The good thing that we have again in North Carolina is a good history of legal civil rights attorneys, from whether it was Mel Watt that moved on to become a congressperson, to Julius Chambers that just passed away, to now Anita Earl, and outside help from people like the Brennan Center. So we have a legal redress to this that we're working on. The movement is fueled by relationships and organizations by groups that have been developed over time. And this has been an emergency call that has been answered. Like I've named off a few: the Planned Parenthood groups, the League of Women Voters, the urban leagues. Everybody sees this not as just a small call to action, but a movement. So even though we all have moved away and started working on other things, we're working coalition some, this has been a rallying cry to where we're all working together in a more cohesive and stronger way that after we put this to bed, hopefully it will continue after that to get us back, I don't know, get us back to being where we used to be, but a new level of working together that will exist after this call to action. We're going to talk, Ron and I are going to talk on how we've done it and how we are doing it. And there's like 4 basic components to this. One, of course, is organizing, grassroots organizing. Voter engagement. We've been doing a lot of voter engagement work. Advocacy and research. Organizing, something that we've been really strong on in Democracy in North Carolina. And over the years, coming to functions like this and working in coalition, we've even gotten our organizing skills better. But what we saw and developed in North Carolina is regional organizing, maybe centered in the state capital. That's our main office, but regional organizing has been crucial. And if you are going to do this kind of thing, you have to go into that thinking about regionalism in your state, if it's a large state, because the bean counters and accountants that live in Charlotte aren't the same thing as the civil rights leaders and pastors that live in Winston-Salem, or the military. We got to deal with CEOs and 5-star generals, the generals that live there, or the rural farmers that live out his way. So I'm able to talk the talk and walk the walk with the bean counters, but I might not have that same look with the big-time reverend doctors in Winston-Salem. So each one of us as an organizer spends our time knowing our area, knowing what that particular area is, and figuring out how to take that and bring that type of organizing there. Local coalitions has been strong. Democracy in North Carolina, we do a lot in the terms of facilitating. We're not always the group that's there on the door, or we're not always the ones that's there doing the meetings in these neighborhoods, but we're strong in facilitation. So we have to work in strong local coalitions. The League of Women Voters in Charlotte has always been my strongest part. I am good for being able to get some people in the room, but I'm not able to always pick the phone up and get the mayor to call me back. So if I have something and I can't get the mayor to call me back, then I call Ms. Clance from the league. Ms. Clance says, hold 15 minutes. A few minutes later, the mayor calls and says, damn, Robert, why did you just call me? Why did you get Ms. Clance on? But it's that working in coalition has been able to bring about the type of changes and to build what we were able to build. Leadership development through training and opportunities. We also try to make sure that we're developing leaders, because organizers can only do so much. For one, we don't speak for the people. We try to take what the people want and make sure we facilitate it and get them in the right spot, the right position to present their issues and get change. So to have that done, we've got to be training leaders. So we've spent a lot of times working on how to build power. We have leadership classes all over the state that we call Pathways to Power, where we try to take a normal person that used to just want to take time to answer phones or go out and knock on doors and say, would you like to learn how to organize? Would you like to learn how to be more, a bigger part of this system? And we take them and we put them through leadership development. And the next thing we say is, so which track do you want to do? You want to go and serve on a local board or commission? You want to run for office? You want to go out and you want to educate people? And we put our money where our mouth is and try to train and develop leaders. Many campaigns, it's been crucial because there are so many different things to work on that you can't, one, work in a silo, and two, you can't work on everything. So we try to spend time and devote finding campaigns, many campaigns, putting the money, the time, and the effort. To give you two examples, when Adam and I were a lot younger, North Carolina did not have Sunday voting. So I was working with an organization called Acorn at the time, and Adam was doing my job in Charlotte. And we said, I think from maybe, I don't know if Adam got the idea from coming to one of these meetings or what, but he said, you know, we really need to take a push to get Sunday voting in North Carolina. Charlotte's the largest city. Let's go out and let's try to form a campaign to get Sunday voting as a test market in Charlotte. So, Adam and I talked and came up with the slogan, Souls to the Polls. We went out and talked to a couple of pastors, said, pastors, this is what we want to do. The pastor said, no, we're not going to mix church and religion. So we had to come up with a campaign. How are we going to church and politics? So we had to say here, church and religion. You say, everybody in North Carolina will go to church every Sunday. So that's a prime example. You can see that. But church and politics. So we had to figure out how we were going to get the pastors to accept this. So we started a campaign on it. And we were able to start building a little support. Pastors still did not want to see it. So we got some people that were big in the NAACP in the past. They got on the phone. They got us Jesse. Reverend Jackson came to Charlotte. We did a big meeting. Jesse sat down and we got all the other people whose name was Reverend Doctor in the room. By the end of the meeting, he had them with tears in their eyes. And they came out and they said, how dare a state say that we can't? Jesse shook our hand and left. But that was one campaign. Our new campaign to bring about this change and bring this momentum is to jumpstart this upcoming election. So we went and found someone that could take this campaign and run with it. We found Ron. And Ron's lived all over the country. Ron's done, organizing for immigrants. He's done union organizing. He's a master at this. And Ron sat down and they planned out Operation Jumpstart. How in this first 100 days we're going to get people so fired up, so full of venom, that they're going to want to take the actions to help us win back this General Assembly. Not only are we going to do that, but Ron teaches me things that in the field as an organizer, I don't do that much. We're going to database them, Robert. I'm like, hell, you database them, I'll get them to you. So now I want Ron to spend a few minutes picking up from, of course, Nancy, to pick up from there and start talking about voter engagement and where are we going to go with that.
Okay, well, afterwards, okay. I told you guys my name is Nancy, and I'm in Southeast North Carolina, which does house Fort Bragg, Fayetteville area, which is the largest, I believe, military installation in the country. So you have a very strong military presence, but if you go 5 miles outside of Fayetteville, you'll see cotton fields and tobacco fields and so on. And you'll see that until you get to the beaches. You'll see sand. And the beautiful Atlantic Ocean, which is a whole nother. So it's an interesting territory. I'm going to start off kind of backwards because what I wanted to talk about first, because I think that without research, you are less effective in terms of organizing. So Democracy North Carolina is a research organization. We do research. Our director, Bob Hall, and now he's even getting assistance, crunches numbers, looks at where things are, and so we're able to put out stuff like, in talking about North Carolina, which is a Bible Belt, buckle, I call it the buckle of the Bible Belt, because there's great religiosity in North Carolina. And so a lot of pastors were afraid, to do anything, educate people and so on. We don't have a copy of it with us here, but we have a folder, a 4-page folder that teaches faith organizations what they can and cannot do. We make it very simple. You may do this, you may do this, no, you can't do this, and we distribute, how many of those, Adam? Thousands and thousands of them. And so we've engaged churches more because they now understand what they can and cannot do. Now this piece is a wonderful piece, and this is a research piece. It is a report card that we have distributed to tell you what our lawmakers, how they voted. And our lawmakers, for the most part, tells you how our state legislature voted on key issues that are important, progressive issues, and issues that impact folks. And I can tell you, how many of you in here have ever been a teacher? Anybody in here ever taught school? I was gonna say a couple people I have. Well, you know what F is? Oh, you went to school, right? Yeah, forgive me. I'm not an original North Carolinian, so I'm from New Jersey. We have that. Oh, New Jersey. I know, Chris country, baby. But you know what this big old red F is, right?
Yes.
That means that the state legislature failed. And then you look at the grades they got, and the way they voted. You have some here who got 0, some got 30 and so on. This is not only taking hold for the state, people love it, because for once they can hold something and see what their legislators did. And so some groups are now doing this on a local level. We put out a report card for the city that I live in, for the mayor and council. That helps people, and it makes politicians accountable. So that's the kind of stuff we do. The other thing in research, it gives you a strategic advantage if you do your research. So we have other information here that will tell you who voted, what age brackets, by all the demographics. And you need that when you go out and talk to folks. Just like when I heard the number today, that 50 million people in this country who are eligible to vote are not registered. That's an important piece of information, because that means that we need to, as all of our groups, work on those unregistered voters. So things like that. It gets media attention, and you better believe our newspaper gets media attention. When people start finding out about Art Pope, who's the budget director, and his impact, his negative impact, and we've been doing Art Pope protests, because you're not allowed to boycott a store. You're not allowed to tell people to boycott a store, one business in North Carolina. So we've had protests all across the state, but it's because we have the information on him. We have the information about where he puts his stores, how much of the percentage he makes his money on as a multi-million. I think he spent $40 million in North Carolina to win the state legislature. He backed 22 Republicans, and I think 18 of those seats were won. Big money he put into those elections. So people need to know that and want to know it, and that's a great part of what we do. The other thing is, of course, we advocate for policy, and we're advocating, of course, for same-day voting, all of the things that made our state so very progressive. The Moral Monday, by the way, is not going to be on a Monday. The biggie is going to be on February 8th, and that's falling on us, I believe, a Saturday. And there will be buses coming from New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. People are coming from all over Georgia to join us. And that Moral Monday, it's called Moral Monday, is growing across this country, particularly in the southern states, because people are understanding what they are giving up and what is being taken away from them. And they're resisting and fighting back against it. I'm not going to take up a lot more time. We do the regular things in voter engagement, phone banking. go canvassing. I don't canvass anymore, my legs don't take that. But I have a phone back at Maven. You know? I love been doing it for years and years. Voter guides, we put out voter guides and other kinds of voting materials. And we also do nonprofit voter engagement. That's very important because we get the faith-based organizations, not only them, they're the homeless shelters, for example, making sure people are registered through them. Community health centers, and they've been very supportive for the most part. Social services, divisions, the Department of Social Services. And so those are all helpful in making sure that people are registered, and we go in and talk with them, go in and you know, that's what we do. But our work is very grassroots, because if you can't beat them with money, you can beat them with numbers. And that means being able to go to the very grassroots people, and you'd be amazed. I mean, for a woman from New Jersey, I've been amazed at the reception, because people are so happy in these rural areas to have anybody come and talk to them about their vote and how valuable it is and who that gives them value. You know, I'll tell you, funny experience I had was I went to a church, I don't know where it was. I know where it was, but you know, it was way out there. And when, after I finished talking and gave materials and we registered people to vote and all, and they gave me 2 watermelons. And I was just proud of those 2 watermelons because it was a giving from the heart. You know, I didn't take money, but you know, it's a giving from the heart, because that's what people want. And particularly when you get into rural and agricultural areas. You know, the cities, you have a different kind of focus.
Yeah, because we take the money.
But, you know, for the people that don't tweet, or the people that don't, you know, aren't on Facebook, you know, it's a wonderful thing to bring this material to them. So, and now it goes back to Adam's kind. No, I'm sorry, Ron.
Yeah, I was gonna just real quick, but then Ron's gonna wrap us up, because I know we're running a little behind. We appreciate you all bearing with us. I just want to say, in the short term, some of the things, I mean, we're gonna keep doing all the stuff we said strategically. We're gonna keep hammering away at the villain, because people, that engages people, they're ready to get in there, you know. So we're gonna keep pushing on this art post stuff. Direct action, we're gonna keep doing that. We had about 1,000 people arrested last year, and so we're going to renew that civil disobedience strategy this year. Nancy got her charges dropped. I didn't. I had to do 25 hours of community service.
I'm still waiting to be
I'm
sent.
waiting. I don't know.
We're going to make our elected allies stronger on our issues, preparing for a better day. Because I think they're seeing the need, because, you know, when things do turn around, we've got opportunities, we got to get back in there and seize those opportunities. It's kind of like federally, you know, too. I always wonder, like, why in 2009, why was there, you know, why do we not get something comprehensive moving federally on election reform? I know the ACA sort of sucked it all up, but it's just, you know, we got to be ready to take advantage of some of these opportunities. And we're going to keep a record of all these negative effects of all these laws that will help legally and so forth. Ron?
Okay. And I just wanted to give a disclaimer to Robert. I have a lot less organizing experience than most people here on the panel, so I want to recognize that. And that, you know, I think people in the South, you know, you have also white skin privilege, you know, that gives you access to places. I also have triple citizenship that has helped me get around a little bit, you know. That
So if it doesn't work, you go move to the
I'm just saying, I've been able to move to different places, you know, and that's given me some insights. Growing up in Nicaragua, you know, living in a country that moved from dictatorship to democracy and now back to dictatorship, you know, it's given me a lot of passion for voting rights issues. But we have a wealth of experience here in community organizing. So in terms of, we have some, just going to talk briefly about a few things external that are either challenges or opportunities. So challenges, people have talked a lot about some of the, you know, the gerrymandering that we have, you know, the litigation that we also have, you know, we have challenges with litigation because oftentimes the court system is not in our advantage. You know, it's often held by privilege, you know, by the parties in power and that don't necessarily want to, you know, give access to people. So we have, you know, a lot of people who have, there's a lot of anti-government sentiment because of, you know, these, you know, real facts that, you know, that either the legislature at the, you know, at the executive body, you know, at different levels of government, people see the rights being stripped away. So, you know, we have people who disengage at times because they don't really see how they're going to make a difference. On the other hand, we've in North Carolina, we moved to be in 38th place in voter turnout, up to 12th place in voter turnout in the last few years. And that's a tremendous jump. I mean, if you just think of, you know, all the states, you know, that we kind of leapfrog over, you know, because of all these reforms that people were talking about, you know, that help people get out, that help people mobilize. So I think, you know, we were seeing a groundswell. We were seeing a lot of people, you know, a lot of people that want to be engaged. They might have not maybe had the opportunities, but because we worked in concert with other organizations, we were able to, you know, pass some measures that enable people to get into, you know, voting, into activating. And that's one of our biggest advantages. We have people power, as you all know. That's something we try to capitalize. Our organization believes strongly in community organizing, and we have, you know, organizers who work in different parts of the field. And right now we have a lot of people who are pissed off, who are angry about what's going on. People talked about Moral Monday. We had over 900 people arrested, committed civil disobedience, you know, because they're upset. That's a huge number. I mean, like, to have 900 plus people getting arrested, you know, it's not something that happens every day. So, you know, that's a tremendous thing. You know, we've had immigrant rights marches that have drawn, you know, over 6,000 people in little towns at times. You know, Siler City, a town of 10,000 people, had an immigrant rights march of 6,000, and Charlotte as well had a huge immigrant rights march. So you see this, you know, you see the fight against Amendment 1 that we unfortunately lost, you know, for LGBT rights, but it was still, you know, a lot of opposition, a lot of people that, you know, felt this was unjust. So we're seeing a lot of people who want to engage. You know, we see with the high unemployment we have right now, a lot of people mobilized in the 99% movement. You know, we had encampments in different parts of the state, and people that were really, for the first time, becoming engaged on economic issues. So we have all these people working on all these different issues, and I think now they're seeing how it all relates to voting rights in a way. And so we're trying to connect the dots, you know, and really help people engage on this. We have a lot of people who signed up, hundreds of people who signed up through our website that they want to be involved, you know. So we have all these organizers, but we can't reach everybody. So a lot of the work that we're doing is to try to organize these teams, you know, to help leaders take action in their own communities. And that's the only way we're going to be able to reach the whole state, is if we're